Alright, welcome to the Learning Target video or the Learning Target number 7 video right here. I can apply the concept of unit rate to determine an unknown. Now, we've already done these a lot on review sheets. We've done, if you'll think back to, you knew I was giving you like 5 basketballs cost $93, and I asked you to figure out how much 3 costs, and I told you must use unit rate. Well, the way we did it, if you'll remember, maybe you do, maybe you don't, is we had to figure out how much 1 basketball cost, and then we determined, then we multiplied it by 3 to figure out how much 3 of them cost. So it's all proportions. I mean, that's what this is going to be about. So hopefully you feel like this Learning Target 7 is going to be very much review, because we've tried to cover it on review sheets leading up. Okay, so go ahead and flip to page 9 in your notes. Okay, my notes are going to look a little different than yours today, because the way I had to put these on here, but we'll go one by one and we'll skip around a little bit. So let's go ahead and look here. Okay, so there's your target once again. Chloe scored 87 points in 5 basketball games. Put brackets around it because, as you guys have been doing the whole time, we would call that our fake ratio. Okay, that's just the fake information. Okay, now again, the word fake doesn't mean the same here as it does in like Learning Target number 3 and 4, but I think you guys get the picture that that's the given ratio, or that's the given information. Okay, that's how much Chloe scores. Okay, Fiona scored 45 points in 2 basketball games. Okay, we want to know which player scored more points per game. So that's exactly what unit rate is, guys. Remember, unit rate, please write this. Best shortest definition that I can think of is the amount, whoops, should be a T, the amount per 1. I mean, that's a short definition. Now, the one that I had you really remember back in chapter 4 was the amount of one unit, or the amount of some units per 1 of another unit. So in this case, how many points per 1 game? Remember, when we know the word per, we know we're talking about 1. Okay, so we're talking about per 1 game. So we're going to have 2 separate proportions here. Over here, we're going to say this will be Chloe's over here, and then we're going to figure out Fiona's over here. Okay, so we got Chloe and Fiona. Okay, now as you guys think back to when we did unit rate for chapter 4, we remember the 1 always goes in the bottom right. That's just the way unit rate is. That's what we always set up. And since we know we're trying to figure out the amount of points per 1 game, then we can go ahead and put our labels there. Game. That would mean points would go in the top. Okay, we'll do the same thing over here. So we got games, and we'll go ahead and put our 1 there. And then we'll put points in the top. Okay, so now just like we've done all along, this one here is going to be our fake information, or our given information. Okay, it's not what we are trying to figure out, it's what we already know. Okay, for Chloe, we know that she was scoring 87 points but in 5 games. So there's my fake ratio. Okay, and then again, we always like to put a variable here. That's the way I want you to start doing it, because this is the unknown. We want to know how many points per 1 game. Okay, over here we'll get this from Fiona's fake ratio. She's scoring 45 points in 2 games. Okay, again, we could put an X there, or you could do another variable. I mean, you could put F for Fiona. It doesn't matter what your variable is. That's irrelevant, really. Okay. Now, there's a couple ways you could solve it. The easiest way, I think, and the way that most of you already know, is okay, if I'm at 5, the only way to get to 1 is by dividing by 5. Okay? So if you do that to the amount of games, what do you have to do to the amount of points? Well, you have to divide that by 5 also. So we got to do 87 divided by 5, and that's going to give us 17.4. 17.4. So that means 17.4 points per game. 17.4. A lot of times, for those of you that are into basketball, it'll look like this: P, PG, points per game. Okay, that's just one way they show it, but that's just showing a unit rate. That's it, points per game. Okay, here we know that for Fiona's, we're dividing her amount of games in half, which means we're dividing by 2. We're dividing by 2. Okay, if you can do this in your head, that's fine, but 45 divided by 2 is 22.5. So we know that's going to be 22.5. Okay, points per one game. So we look here and say, okay, which one of these two is scoring more points per game? And hopefully you're all saying Fiona scored more points per game than what Chloe did. Okay? Now, in this situation, we were just basically comparing the unit rates. That's all you were doing there. Okay? Whereas this one here, you're going to see there's a little bit of a different step. Okay? So, a tennis ball machine can launch 60 tennis balls in 12 minutes. That would be our fake ratio. Okay? At this rate, how many tennis balls can it launch in 2 hours? Okay? So we've got to do some work here. Okay? Because I see minutes there and I see hours there. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this thing written here. I'm going to say, okay, 60 tennis balls in 12 minutes. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I want to figure out the unit rate. Again, the target says I can apply the concept of unit rate to determine an unknown. Well, if I want to know how many tennis balls in 2 hours, I'm going to have to figure out per hour or per minute. And I think the best way to go about this is right now, whenever you see different units, you need to convert them to the same units. Now, I wouldn't really want to convert 12 minutes to an hour because that's not going to be in a fraction. It's going to be a partial hour, right? It's actually going to be this. It's going to be 12/60ths of an hour, right? I mean, that's what it is. And then, of course, that would simplify and give you a fraction. But I don't like dealing with fractions when I don't have to, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and convert 2 hours, and I'm just going to go ahead and make it 120 minutes. Okay, and I know that because there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, so 60 times 2 would be 120. Okay, so now this is what we're trying to figure out. We know how many tennis balls get launched in 12 minutes. We want to know in 120 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the unit rate per minute. And the reason we're going to do it per minute is because I know that 1 can easily become 120. Okay? So I'm going to look here and say, okay, what am I doing to go from 12 minutes to 1 minute? Well, I'm dividing by 12. What do I got to do to my number of tennis balls then? Hopefully you're all saying divide by 12. And I know that it would launch 5 tennis balls per minute. Okay? So there's my unit rate. That's good. Now what I'm going to do, in a separate proportion, I'm going to take that unit rate and then I'm going to figure out, okay, well, if that's the unit rate, what if I had 120 minutes of the balls being launched? What are you doing to go from 5 to 120? Okay, obviously it's times 120 times 120. Okay, if you need a calculator on this one, you can use it. Okay, it's going to be 5 times 120, and it's going to be 600. Okay, I'll change color so you can see it. Okay, so again, to recap, I took my fake ratio right here. I figured out per minute, and the reason I knew per minute is because I knew that we were trying to figure out the amount of tennis balls per some amount of time. Okay, in this case, 2 hours or 120 minutes. Okay, so what I did is I knew I got to figure out how many tennis balls that is per minute. So that's what I did. Now maybe some of you are sitting here, you don't have to write this, but maybe some of you are realizing, well, wait a minute. Couldn't I have just done this? 5 tennis balls in 12 minutes? And then I could have said, well, what would that be in 120 minutes? And then you said, well, I'm just multiplying by, I'm sorry, this should be 60. Sorry, you're probably all yelling at the screen. Okay, that should be 60. Just rewrite it. Maybe not. Okay, 60. And then what are you doing to go from 12 to 120? Well, you're multiplying by 10 because you're just moving the decimal 1 to the right. So then I got to do that up here, and there's where you get 600. So really, in this problem, you didn't have to do unit rate. You didn't have to, but guess what? When I ask you to, you have to, because that is the target. You have to use the concept of unit rate to find an unknown. The unknown here was how many tennis balls in 120 minutes, or in 2 hours, which is the same thing. Okay? It's all proportions. Okay? Let's do another one here. Okay? Water flows from a faucet at a rate of 5 liters every 25 seconds. Okay? At this rate, how much water will flow from the faucet in 45 seconds? So it's just like we've done all along. This is your fake or your ratio or your fake ratio. This is your real. I mean, it's the same thing over and over. Okay? The one difference being now we're applying the concept of unit rate once again. You've got to find the unit rate. So what we're going to do, since we are being given the real amount of time, it makes sense to figure out, okay, how many liters will the faucet give off, or how much water will come out of it in 1 second, right? Because I know that my fake ratio is this, 5 liters in 25 seconds. I know that I can get from any number to 1 by just dividing the number by itself. Okay? And then I know I can get to any number that's at 1, in this case trying to get to 45, by just multiplying by that number. So that's why we do unit rate. So I know that I'm dividing by 25 here. So that means I need to divide by 25 there. Okay? So I'm going to do 5 divided by 25, and I'm going to get 0.2 liters. So 2/10 of a liter. Okay? There's my unit rate. So let's go through all the stuff we have here. This right here, I would call that my fake ratio. This right here, I'm going to call it my unit rate, right? Because per 1 second. Now I'm going to take that unit rate, 2/10 of a liter, in 1 second, which again is my unit rate. Now I'm going to figure out my real information. This becomes my real. Okay? And that's saying, well, what if I had 45 seconds running? If it ran for 45 seconds, how long or how many liters am I going to let go down the drain? So I look here and say, okay, I know that I am multiplying by 45, so then I need to do 2/10 times 45. And that's going to give me 9. Okay? 9 liters. Did we see how I did that? Now, again, you do not have to write this, but I just want you all to see it, that it's not always necessary to find the unit rate, okay, with the ways I've taught you. So just watch for a second. You could have just skipped right to this step and done 45 seconds here, and then said, well, how long is that, or how many liters is that? And then, sure, you don't know what you're doing to go from 25 to 45, right? But you could use this method, cross multiply, divide. It'll still give you 9, and I'll show you that real quick here. Okay, so I know it's going to be 5 times 45, which is, we'll never know, 225, and then if we divide that by 25, we get 9, and there you go. So I just want you to see, with the way I've taught you with the cross multiply and divide, you don't necessarily have to do unit rate, but I feel like unit rate really makes it make more sense, because if you can figure out how many, in this case, liters of water would go down the drain in 1 second, you could figure out 45 seconds, 60 seconds, 10 hours, it doesn't matter. You could figure out anything. Okay? Alright, so I really didn't leave us enough room here to do part B, so I guess if you have room, maybe somewhere at the top possibly, try to do it. Maybe just draw an arrow to the top. I'm going to have to erase this. I apologize. The spacing is not good enough. Okay, so now let's do B. At this rate, how long will it take to collect 60 liters of water? Sorry about that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use unit rate again. Only this time, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out the opposite. We're going to figure out not how many liters per second. we're going to figure out how many seconds per liter. So I know this is what I'm trying to figure out. Because if I can figure out how many seconds per liter, can't I just take that unit rate there per liter and just say, okay, I'm just going to multiply this by 60. You see how I'm getting that? That's kind of the whole point of this. Okay, so we know our labels are seconds to liters. Seconds to liters. So this is going to be seconds up here, seconds here. Okay, and then I go, okay, my fake information is here, so I know that's going to be 25 seconds for 5 liters. What am I doing to go from 5 liters to 1 liter? Well, I'm dividing by 5. So what do I got to do to 25 seconds? Divided by 5. That means that 5 seconds per liter. Makes sense. Takes 5 seconds for 1 liter to go down to get collected. Okay. Then you're going to take that unit rate right there, 5 seconds per liter, and I'm going to say, what am I doing to my amount of liters? Times 60. So what do I have to do to my number of seconds? Times 60, and that's going to be 300 seconds. And then if you want to convert that, because 300 seconds, what does that even equal? Well, you just think, okay, if I took 5 and multiplied it by 60, I'm multiplying it by 60 seconds in a minute, so wouldn't it just be 5 minutes? Okay, so that would be 5 minutes, which would be the same thing. By the way, converting time, also a proportion. You know there are 60 seconds in 1 minute, right? And that everybody should agree with that. And then you just say, okay, I have 300 seconds. I want to know how many minutes that is. So X minutes. What are you doing to go from 60 to 300? Times 5. So what do you got to do to your number of minutes? Times 5. Everything comes back down to proportions. Everything really is a proportion. But I want you guys to all understand here that the reason I did per liter here instead of per second was because I was given a real amount of liters this time. Whatever your real info is, that's what you want to figure out per one of, because that's going to give you the ability to go from 1 to 60 is easy. You can always multiply 1 times something to get that number. Okay? All right, let's do, I think we have one more on this page here. Well, I don't know about yours. Yours are all different. Okay. There are 1,600 kilocalories in the 5 cups of dog food that Mike gives his adult dog. Mike gives him 2 cups of the same dog food. How many kilocalories are there in the 2-cup serving? So again, we are given there's our real information right there. I'll put a box around real. There's real, there's fake. Okay, so I have 1,600. Actually, I just broke my own rule. We should never put numbers on. We should always just put our proportion down. And I'm trying to figure out how many 2 cups. So I know 2 cups is going to be there eventually. So what I need to figure out is how many is that per cup and per cup. So that means cups are always on the bottom. And then kilocalories, I guess KC, I don't know. I don't know if that would be the shortened version of that or not, would be on the top. Okay, so I take my fake ratio and put 1,600 to 5. Well, how many is that per cup? Well, I divide by 5. Divide by 5. Get out my calculator. 1,600 divided by 5 is going to give me 320. So I know that each cup is 320 kilocalories. Okay? Then I go ahead and bring my unit rate over here. And now I say, okay, well, what about 2? Well, I'm going to multiply by 2, multiply by 2, and that's going to give me 640 kilocalories. Okay? So that's exactly what that is. Points in 5 basketball games. This question right here says put brackets around it because, as you guys have been doing the whole time, we would call that our fake ratio. Y. Okay, and that's just the fake information. You an actual country, it's just now again, the word fake doesn't mean the same here as it does in like Learning Target number 3 and 4. But I think you guys get the picture that that's the given ratio, or that's the given information. We did a couple of these the other day. I think on Thursday. That's how much Chloe scores. There was somebody renting out tennis courts and then scored. I can't remember the other one exactly what it was. But it was the same type of thing. I think it was renting a room.
We want to
some sort of
know
room, but
which players
it
scored
gives you a
more
constant
points
rate. So
per
we
game.
know that
So
for the first
that's
20
exactly
grams
what
of
unit
whatever
rate
you
is,
wanna
guys.
Mail, that costs 50 cents. I mean, that's automatic.
Remember,
I mean,
unit rate.
if you're
Please
20
write
grams,
this.
you've got to pay 50 cents a gram. So that's what it is. So it's 50
Best,
cents.
best shortest
and that's
definition that I can think
for
of
20 grams.
is the amount.
That's going to get tacked on. And I know
Oops,
that
should be a
me
T.
mailing this letter
The
is going to be
amount
at least 50 cents because I know that my
per
letter,
one.
or whatever it is, my package or letter, weighs more.
I mean, that's a short definition. Now,
20 grams.
the one that I had
So
you really
after
remember
that, you've got to
back in
use
chapter
this other ratio
4
that's
was
given. So you're going to have to do a
the amount
proportion.
of one unit, or
Okay.
the amount of some
And you know,
unit.
right here's your fake ratio. You know that every 10 grams costs 30 cents.
per one of another unit. So in this case,
So you
how
know
many
that
points
right there it is. So 10 grams
per
costs 30
one
cents.
game?
So that means
Remember, when we
you
know
want-
the word
you
per,
don't have to write
we
what
know
I'm
we're
about to
talking
write,
about
but
one.
That means that
Okay,
20 grams.
so we're talking about
would
per
be
one
60
game.
cents,
So we're
right?
going to have
I mean,
two
you're doubling your amount
separate
of money. That's what it
proportions
means.
here.
Then every
Over here, we're going to
more
say this
10
will,
grams you add in there.
this will be Chloe's
it's
over
gonna add
here.
30 cents to your cost.
And then we're gonna
Okay. So what we've got to do is we're going to set up this proportion, and again,
Figure
we just
out
want to put labels on there first. I probably should have done that from the beginning. And now
Fiona's
we've got
over
to
here.
put, since we have the real information that says grams,
Okay.
we're going to ask ourselves, how many grams do we have?
So we got Chloe and
over
Fiona.
20
Okay.
grams.
Now,
How many grams
as you
do we have
guys
over? How many
think
more
back
grams
to when we did
after
unit
20
rate
do we
for
have?
chapter
So we would
4,
do 60 minus 40.
we remember the one
and that gives
always
us,
goes in the bottom
or I'm sorry,
right.
60 minus 20, and that would give us 40.
It's just the
So
way
we
unit
know
rate
we have
is.
40 grams more to account for. So now you could cross multiply, divide.
That's what we
or
always set up.
You could just know.
And
that,
since we
oh,
know we're
well, I'm
trying to
just
figure out the amount of
quadrupling
points
or
per one
multiplying
game,
my
and we can go ahead and
number
put
of
our
grams by
labels
4.
there.
So that means I need to
Game,
multiply my number.
that would
my
mean
amount of
points would
money
go in the
by
top.
4. So that's going to be.
Okay, we'll do the same thing over
$1.20.
here.
Okay. So here's what we're looking at.
So we
We're
got
looking at
game,
those 40 grams. It's going to
games,
cost
and we'll go ahead and put our one there.
And for the first
And then we'll
for the first 20 grams that we
put
said,
points in the
that's
top.
going to be 50 cents.
Points in the top.
50 cents for those 20
Okay.
grams.
So
what we have to do
that-
is we have
just
to
like we're
add
doing,
$1.20,
we've done all along.
and we're going to have to add 50 cents to it because that's the first.
This
gram.
one here is going to be
So
our
again,
fake
this one right here is
information or
representing
our
the
given
additional 40 grams.
information.
This amount of money
Okay.
here is
It's
representing the first 20 grams. So, I mean, 40 plus 20
not
is 60. So then we're going to get
what we
$1.70 is going to what it's going to be to mail.
We're
This
trying to
package
figure out
for
is
this
what we
letter
already know.
weighing
Okay,
60
for
grams
Chloe, we know
onto
that she was
line.
scoring 87
Now this right
points
here, we did this the other day, but
per,
I'll just quickly do it.
or not per, but in 5
Everything's
games. So
about
there's my
labels.
fake ratio.
Okay, that's everything
Okay.
we're doing with proportion
And then-
about labels. Okay.
and again, we
So
always
know
like to
we're
put a
talking about
variable here.
miles and gallons. By the way, this line.
That's the way I
remember,
want you
when
to start
say
doing it
ratios,
because
you can say miles
this
to
is the
gallons,
unknown. We want to
or
know
this
how
little
many
ratio can be
points
written as
per
miles
one
per
game.
gallon at times. Okay, if this is 1.
Okay.
Okay, but it can't, you can say it that way. Okay, so we'll do miles and gallons there. So again, this is
Over
my
here
fake
we'll
ratio,
get
as
from-
I said. So I'm just going to put 135 miles on there
Get this from
And
Fiona's
in 5 gallons.
fake ratio. She's scoring
Okay.
45
So I always want to look
points.
here, and I always want to see, okay,
per-
what
or
piece of
in
real information
2
did they
games.
give us?
Okay.
And they gave
Again,
us
we can put an X
11
there, or you
grams.
could do
They gave
another
us the amount of
variable.
grams.
I mean, you could
so what
put
I'm going to do
F
is
for
I'm going to
Fiona.
figure
It
out
doesn't
a
matter
unit
what your
rate
variable is. That's irrelevant,
per
really.
gram. I
Okay.
want, or not. I'm sorry. I'm saying.
Now, there's a
grams,
couple
I mean
ways you could
gallon, I'm
solve it.
sorry.
The easiest way, I
I'm gonna
think,
figure
and the
out
way
unit
that most
rate
of you
per
already
gallon
know,
because
is you know,
if
okay,
I can figure that out,
if I'm
it's going to be
at
easy
5,
to figure
the only way to get
out,
to 1 is
well,
by
then what is 11?
dividing
So
by
what
5.
I'm going to do is I'm going to
Okay.
figure out
So if
how
you do
many
that
miles
to the
this
amount of
thing goes per
games,
gallon.
what do you have
So
to
I know
do
I'm
to the
dividing
amount
by
of
5,
points?
I'm finding the
Well, you
unit
have to
rate
divide that by
for
5
1
also.
gallon. I'm
So
gonna divide by
we
5
got to
there.
do 87 divided by
135
5, and that's going to give us
135.
17.4.
Divided by 5
17.4.
gives me 27.
So that means
So there's my
17.4
unit rate
points per game.
ratio,
17.4.
27 miles per
A lot of
gallon.
times,
Now I'm
for
gonna
those of you
take
that are into
that
basketball,
ratio,
it'll look
and I'm
like
gonna
this:
make another
PG,
proportion.
points per game. Okay, that's just one way they
Figuring
show it,
out-
but that's just showing a unit
okay,
rate. That's it.
Well, if it's
Points
27
per game.
miles per gallon, now
Okay.
it's real easy
Here,
to figure out.
we
oh,
know that for
well, I'm
Fiona's,
multiplying by 11,
we're
I'm
dividing
multiplying
her
by 11.
amount of games in half,
Now
which
I
means
know
we're
that
dividing by
27
2.
times 11
We're divided by 2.
is
Okay.
297.
If you
Which is,
can
if
do
you
this in
guys
your
will
head,
think
that's
back to
fine.
that
But
worksheet we
45
did
divided
in
by 2
class,
is 22.5. So we know that's going to be, say,
that's
okay.
what the answer was.
Which one?
The only difference was is
Which
we
one of
did it
these
like
two
this.
is scoring
Quickly show you.
more points per game?
135
And hopefully you're all
miles
saying
over 5 gallons.
Fiona
we just went ahead
scored
and put 11 gallons
more points
there,
per game
and then we
than
cross
what Chloe did.
divided But I
Okay.
want you to know because the target says
Now,
I can,
in this situation, we were just
find an
basically
unknown,
comparing
which
the
is the
unit
question,
rates.
how
That's
many
all you were
miles?
doing there.
and then
Okay. Whereas
and then
this one here,
my known information.
you're
will
going
be
to see
down.
there's a
So,
little
that's
bit
it
of
for
a
this
different
one.
step.
So
Okay.
I'll see you guys.
So